There are moments in an NFL season where a single roster move tells you everything you need to know about where a team's head is at. Not the blockbuster trades that dominate headlines, not the splashy free agent signings that break the internet, but those calculated strategic decisions that reveal what's really happening behind closed doors at the practice facility. I'm talking about moves that may seem small on the surface but carry weight that goes far beyond what most people recognize. Welcome to Lions News Fan Report. I'm your host, and if you're here, it's because you want the real story behind every decision our beloved Detroit Lions make. This isn't a channel where you'll find recycled takes or surface-level analysis. Here you're getting the updated news, the strategic breakdowns, and the insider perspective you deserve as a Lions fan who lives and breathes Honolulu Blue. Today, I'm bringing you something that just went down, something that directly addresses a problem we saw exposed in our most recent game, and something that could have significant implications for how this team approaches the rest of this season. Let me paint you a picture of where we are right now, because context is everything in understanding why this matters. The Detroit Lions just came off a bye week, a time when you expect the team to be refreshed, recharged, and ready to execute at the highest level. Dan Campbell and his staff had extra time to prepare, extra time to game plan, extra time to get everyone on the same page, and yet, when we stepped onto that field against the Minnesota Vikings, we looked anything but prepared. That 27-24 loss wasn't just painful because of the final score, it was painful because of how it happened. We got outplayed in crucial moments, we got beat in areas where we should have been dominant, and most frustratingly, we looked like a team that hadn't used that bye week to its fullest advantage. Campbell himself took responsibility for not having the team ready, admitting publicly that the Vikings caught us unprepared. That's not something you hear from Dan Campbell often, and when he says it, you know he means it. But here's what really stood out to me and what should stand out to anyone paying close attention. Campbell specifically mentioned that Minnesota made key plays on special teams that gave them momentum throughout that game. Special teams. That third phase of football that often gets overlooked until it costs you a game. Those crucial moments where field position shifts, where momentum swings, where games get decided by players who might not be household names, but who are absolutely essential to winning football. That's where we struggled. That's where we got beat. And that's exactly where the Lions front office just made a move that should have every fan paying attention. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. The trade deadline passed without the Lions making any splashy moves. No big names coming in, no dramatic additions to bolster a roster that clearly has championship aspirations. Some fans were disappointed. Some were questioning whether management was aggressive enough in addressing our needs. But here's the thing about building a winning organization. It's not always about the headline-grabbing moves. Sometimes it's about recognizing what you already have within your building, identifying specific problems that need addressing, and making smart, calculated decisions that improve your team without mortgaging your future. And that's exactly what happened this week when the Lions elevated Tai Summers from the practice squad to the active roster. Let me tell you about Tai Summers because if you're not familiar with his background, you need to understand what this move represents. This isn't some unknown commodity we're taking a chance on. Summers came into the NFL as a seventh-round pick of the Green Bay Packers back in 2019, and since then, he's appeared in 86 games at the professional level. 86 games. That's legitimate NFL experience. That's a player who understands what it takes to compete at this level week after week. He's recorded 90 career tackles, and while that number might not jump off the page, what's important is understanding where those tackles came from. Summers has been primarily a special teams contributor throughout his career, and that's not a knock on him. That's actually exactly what makes this signing so relevant to our current situation. He's a player who has spent years perfecting his craft in that third phase of the game, learning how to make impact plays when the spotlight isn't necessarily on him. contributing to winning football in ways that don't always show up in the stat sheet, but absolutely show up on the field. The interesting thing about Summers and the Lions is that this isn't a new relationship. He's already been with us this season, appearing in 3 games where he logged 53% of our special team snaps without any defensive time. Think about that percentage for a second. When he was active, he was playing more than half of our special teams plays, which tells you that the coaching staff already trusts him, already believes in what he brings to the table. The Lions actually released him from the active roster back in October, signing him to the practice squad the very next day. That move told us something important at the time. It told us that the organization valued having him in the building, wanted him working with the team, but needed roster flexibility for other situations. Now we're seeing that flexibility work in reverse as he rejoins the active roster, filling the spot that opened when offensive lineman Christian Mahogany was placed on injured reserve. Here's where this gets really interesting from a strategic standpoint. The Lions could have gone in multiple directions with this roster spot. They could have looked for help on the defensive line where we've dealt with injuries. They could have added depth at offensive line beyond just replacing Mahogany's spot. They could have brought in a developmental player at any number of positions. But they chose Summers, they chose a linebacker with special teams expertise, and they made that choice immediately after Campbell specifically called out special teams as an area where we got beat against Minnesota. That's not coincidence. That's intentional roster construction. That's a coaching staff and front office working in sync to address problems the moment they're identified. And that's exactly the kind of responsiveness you want to see from an organization that has legitimate championship aspirations. Let me break down what Summers brings to this roster beyond just the raw numbers. When you watch him play, when you study how he operates on special teams, you see a player with legitimate speed and athleticism. He's someone who can cover ground quickly, who can get downfield on kickoffs and punts, who can be disruptive in the return game. That speed matters enormously in today's NFL, where special teams have become increasingly important with new kickoff rules, and where field position battles often determine outcomes of close games. But beyond the physical tools, Summers brings experience and versatility. He understands multiple special teams roles, he can adjust on the fly, and perhaps most importantly for where we are right now, he's already familiar with what Dan Campbell and this coaching staff expect. There's no learning curve about the culture, no adjustment period to understand how things work in Detroit. He can step in immediately and contribute, which is exactly what this team needs as we try to bounce back from that Vikings loss. Looking ahead to our upcoming matchup, we're facing a Washington Commanders team that just lost their starting quarterback, Jaden Daniels, to an elbow injury. On paper, that should give us an advantage. That should make this a game where we can reassert ourselves and get back on track. But as we just saw against Minnesota coming off a bye, nothing is guaranteed in this league. You have to execute. You have to win the little battles, and you have to dominate in all 3 phases. That's where having Summers active becomes potentially significant. If we can control field position through strong special teams play, if we can flip momentum with a big stop on a punt return or a crucial tackle on kickoff coverage, those are the types of plays that can define a game against a team that's dealing with uncertainty at the quarterback position. Now, let me speculate a bit on what this could mean moving forward, because I think there's a larger story here beyond just one roster move. The Lions bringing Summers up suggests they're taking a hard look at how they're constructed on special teams, and it suggests they're willing to make changes to get better in that area. Could we see more emphasis on special teams in practice? Could we see different personnel groupings in those situations? Could this be the first of multiple moves aimed at shoring up this phase of our game? I think it's entirely possible, and honestly, it's encouraging to see the organization be this proactive. Championship teams are built on identifying weaknesses and addressing them quickly, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. The optimist in me, and trust me, there's plenty of optimism when it comes to this Lions team, sees Summers as a potential catalyst for turning around our special teams performance. Sometimes all it takes is one player who brings energy, who makes a couple of key plays, who raises the standard for everyone around him. We've seen it happen before in Detroit, where a seemingly minor roster addition ends up having an outsized impact on team success. Could Summers be that guy on special teams? Could he be the piece that helps us avoid those momentum-shifting plays that hurt us against Minnesota? I genuinely believe he could be, and I'm excited to see him get this opportunity on the active roster. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you because this is your team as much as it's mine. Do you think bringing back Tai Summers is the right move to address our special teams issues? Are you confident this helps us bounce back against Washington? What other changes would you like to see as we push toward the playoffs? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I read every single one, and your perspective matters to this community we're building. My final analysis is straightforward. This is exactly the type of move that demonstrates why Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have built something special in Detroit. They're not panicking after one loss. They're not making desperate decisions. They're calmly and strategically addressing identified problems with calculated roster moves. Tai Summers gives us experience, speed, and versatility in an area where we need it most right now. If he can help stabilize our special teams and prevent the types of plays that cost us against Minnesota, then this move will prove to be far more significant than the modest headlines it generated. That's what smart football operations look like, and that's why I remain incredibly optimistic about where this team is headed. If you found this breakdown valuable, I need you to do something for me right now. Subscribe to Lions News Fan Report if you haven't already, because I'm delivering this level of coverage multiple times every week. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any updates about roster moves, game analysis, or breaking news. Share this video with other Lions fans who want real insight into what's happening with our team. We're building a community of informed, passionate fans here, and I want you to be part of it. See you in the next video with more analysis and updates. 1. Pride.